Welcome back to the Rental Journal. I'm coming to you live virtually today from two sides of the globe. Today I'm joined by two individuals who are truly leading one of the most influential rental businesses across Europe. Phil Parker, CEO, and Andrew Winlow, Fleet Director at Sunbelt Rentals UK and Ireland. Phil and Andrew are both leading this organisation at such a pivotal time, not only for the company but for the rental industry holistically. With global expansion, innovation and huge shifts in how rental businesses operate in 2026. Phil, with yourself recently travelling across the US with Sunbelt going onto the New York Stock Exchange, attending the world famous and monumentally sized ConExpo in Las Vegas. Firstly, congratulations to yourselves, the team, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction. Great to be with you, and hopefully we'll have a fantastic conversation.
Phil, we've obviously had a bit of a chat before sitting down and you guys having a big announcement recently. How did you guys find enjoying your travels across the US, connecting with the team in the United States, and what does this opportunity and moment really mean to you guys for the future of Sunbelt?
Well, it was a great trip. The New York Stock Exchange was something else. So the night before we actually had sort of a Sunbelt only event, we had dinner, sort of violins playing on the Wall Street, on the floor there, which was a totally unique experience. Then the day after, obviously, we did the ringing of the bell with myself and the senior team and 200 others, and it was a fantastic experience. Sunbelt took over the floor. We all had Sunbelt cowbells ringing them, annoying all the CNBC presenters. So it was great fun. But what it really means is the company will have access to some funds in the US that have desperately wanted to sort of invest in Sunbelt Group, but because of our UK Stock Exchange sort of listing, couldn't for a variety of reasons. So it's a deeper level of investment pool we get access to do more interesting things as a wider group, both in the US and in Europe. So it should be an exciting time.
Phil, you mentioned three key points. Firstly, a massive thank you to your global Sunbelt team, that this milestone doesn't happen because of a handful of people, but focus on the detail of every single day. Recognition and all a part of the 2nd of March, employees being granted $1,500 share award, a tangible thank you. And lastly, what changes? Saying that not much, but tomorrow and in the future, still continue to serve customers, build a brilliant team and back each other. That the listing simply placed you on a higher stage, but doesn't change who you are, the values of the Sunbelt community, and at a higher level, how do you really see this preparing you guys for what you're wanting to do in the future, moving towards being this amazing platform globally?
Yeah, so I think the stock exchange listing, it changes the place where you buy shares. So in that sense, not a lot changes, but it is a recognition from everybody in the company. We've got 4,500 staff members in the UK and Europe. There's more than 20,000 across North America. And it's a recognition about the scale that's been built by that group of people. And as we know in rental, everything ultimately comes down to the people who are closest to the customers, which are usually the people in the depots. It's the people that Andrew's, in the UK at least, he's buying all the assets for, getting all the feedback from, and without them, none of that could be achievable. So it really is, it's not a small group of people in a darkened room who come up with clever strategies and then sort of come out bleary-eyed like sort of Moses coming down with the tablets. It's sort of it's a huge team effort. And it's the it's the day-to-day depot experience that makes the business win. So that comes with fantastic stuff. It comes with its challenges. It's why we like rental so much, isn't it? Because there's so many characters and people on the coalface who make it all happen.
So Andrew, from your lens, how do you see this shift from being a domestic partner initially of Sunbelt going globally over the last couple of years, because you're truly seeing what the evolution of what the customers require at the ground level and expect from us as a rental provider. So what do you really think customers are going to seek from you from a product standpoint in the next 5 years?
Regarding the customers, I think, and again, I think you mentioned about the ConExpo show that we were over in Australia. Our customers are looking for a lot more innovation going forward. In the world of AI, we're seeing a lot of advanced technologies. Um, Personally, and I don't know what Phil's view is, but I didn't see much innovation shine through the ConExpo show. I was expecting a lot more in regards to obviously the innovation of product, the use of AI in product, which didn't actually come through. Which in our industry, when people talk innovation, they always gravitate to the actual asset, and people seem to think, well, what innovation are you bringing to market in regards to the asset? From an asset management point of view, I would say it isn't just the asset that obviously in the rental sector, we focus on. Innovation can come through, a lot of other things as opposed to just, new ways of doing things with the same equipment. So certainly within Sunbelt, we're looking for more innovation in the way that we take our offering to market. And obviously, one of the things we look at primarily is use of data, within that technology and how we can use data to better service our customer. And I think that is, the innovation that we'll be kind of cheerleading and taking into the future.
I think we did. I mean, I think I saw. I don't know what your view was, Andrew. I saw on the battery technology side of things. I saw it improve. I saw it improving a little bit. Some of those hybrid technologies. If you went back 5 or 6 years, some of the battery technology was sort of conceptual. It sounded great, and in theory, it could work on a spreadsheet or on a PDF, brochure. I saw a couple of products where I thought, yeah, actually, this is a product that's designed and is more robust for rental, but the price points were just bonkers. So you were never going to buy a lot of them because you could never get the customer to justify the huge expense. Whereas in the UK, we've got some existing suppliers we're working with where you can use battery hybrid technology. That yes, is a bit more expensive, but it's far more robust than it was 5 years ago, and it generates the right amount of fuel savings that gives some of those sustainability benefits that UK customers are looking for as well. But I tend to agree with you. It's sort of there was very little of real exciting game-changing stuff when our customers are looking for fully integrated telematics to give them productivity insights. That's what our customers want, which
Agreed.
we're not quite there yet.
But we have been down that path, and this is where sometimes taking first mover advantage can be a disadvantage. So in the world of battery technology and enhancing things like solar energy, wind, etc., which is absolutely the way forward to try and decarbonize. The trouble is technology moves sometimes too quick. So with regards to battery technology, we have made significant investment, only then to find out that 2 or 3 years later the chemical compounds and makeup of said battery changes, and then you're into customers going, well, actually I want the next iteration. But of
Yeah.
course, with an asset base, when you depreciate certain assets over a long depreciation cycle, when technology changes too quickly, then we are left with potentially big problems, and this is where absolutely innovation you can't hold back. But this is working with manufacturers, we sometimes have to understand how we handle obsolescence when technology changes, and
Yeah.
that's a difficult one. Not so much for me to manage with the manufacturers, but for us as a business to manage with our customers' expectations, because we cannot continue putting millions of pounds into a technology to depreciate over a 8 to 10 year period for it to change within 2 or 3 years.
I'm interested from your perspective, Michael. Is it because in the UK we are very sort of hybrid technology, sustainability focused, because the government ensures that through the procurement process for any mega project in the UK. Do you get is it the same tension in Australia and in some of the other countries you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that from our perspective in Australia, we're this weird hybrid mix of the US and the UK. So from potentially a pop culture standpoint, we look at the US, but from a safety, a compliance, an innovation standpoint, we're very much led by Europe and the UK. So especially with the logistics issues of Australia, we're a massive country spread very vast. So hybrid technology, we have great weather that we can access and utilize from a solar standpoint, from batteries. We're very open-minded to new technologies, and Australia does lead the way very much in that way. Whereas when I go to the US, it's probably a little bit further behind, but they're leading in other aspects. But from a green standpoint, I would say 100% you guys are on the money. Europe is definitely the leader, always probably has been and still is. So I would say the world is looking in your neck of the woods for those innovations for sure. So Phil, you said before that innovation only matters if it delivers real impact. If it's faster, it's safer, it's more productive. But right now, where do you think that the rental industry is genuinely innovating, or potentially there's areas that we're just adding complexity?
So I think for us, a lot of our customers in the UK are large household infrastructure sort of tier one contractors. So where do they look for us? They are looking for safety, they're looking for sustainability, and they're looking for technology integration. So where we are innovating is in places like power, we just touched on it, where customers expect 100% uptime, but they also expect a 24/7 sort of monitoring solution that goes alongside the product. So it used to be the case that rental companies used to be able to drop off a 200 kVA generator with some cables, maybe with some boards or what have you, and the customer would have the technology, the know-how and the engineering prowess to sort of plug it all together. Now the rental company is becoming far more integrated. So there's an expectation that those engineering skills are all in-house, the design is done in-house, the risk management is done in-house, the monitoring of the solution is in-house, and it's all done cheaper than it used to be done sort of 10 years ago, when you used to be able to just drop the asset off and sort of bomb out the back door. So I think the rental industry needs to lean into that, to develop the skills within the business, like starting with young people and apprentices and all that sort of stuff, which we and lots of other rental companies are doing, so that we have that capability to offer as a solution rather than just a dry hire. So I think increasingly rental companies and owners that I meet are thinking, how can we create a solution which is a moat, that not many people can compete with, that combines assets with people or a combination of assets that then really provides a differentiated offering for the customer. And I know that's a lot of I'm using sort of gobbledygook language, but that's really what customers are looking for. Give me a package solution at a price that makes sense, that has safety as a priority, sustainability as a bonus is what most customers think. Some of them it's an absolute priority, but for most it's a bonus that we can rely on and sort of repeat on a regular basis.
Andrew, would you mirror that perspective, that in some situations, potentially in the pursuit of innovation, we can maybe potentially become distracted versus what actually moves the needles for customers, and not just innovating for innovation's sake, but really looking for those real solutions?
Yeah, no, I would absolutely echo what Phil's saying, and staying with power, I guess, and that's a prime example, because in today's world, as I said, everyone wants to decarbonise. And I think sometimes innovation is driven and at such a fast pace, we miss some of the basics. So, one of the challenges we've had in the specifically the power business is a stage. When we moved from the stage 3 engines up to stage 5, and I think people who, I'm going to say governments, were misled by introducing technologies too quick. So in the world of power, going from a stage 3A, and I'm getting technical here, Michael, by the way, but straight into a stage 5, we missed out the bit in between, which is stage 4 as such, or stage 3B as we called it in Europe. And basically that meant that we didn't have time to develop and evolve the different sector. So what that means in I guess basic language is we went from a very basic engine and exhaust system, and they introduced DPFs and also AdBlue, which are two ways of keeping emissions down in one go, as opposed to separating them out. Where in the US they went from a stage 3 to a stage 3B as such, where that is the AdBlue or the DEF, and then they moved into stage 5. In the UK and Europe, we hit it in one go. Now that meant the complexities where Phil's explained we had to adapt and sell a solution, because you can't just stick a stage 5 generator on a site and expect it to operate correctly, given the difference and change in technology and innovation. So we had to adapt it to sell a solution. We had to find ways of controlling the soot emissions, and therefore, let's say, applying load to a generator, because one of the things that generators don't like is to be underloaded. So that's where the hybrid battery technology comes in, because whilst it also offers additional fuel savings and additional use of solar, wind energy, etc., it also protects the asset. And then similarly, you have the technology in both the battery and also the generator that you have to couple together, then external fuel tanks, then external AdBlue tanks. So the days of just selling a stage 3 generator as a commodity product, we had to adapt and sell that overall solution.
And it's in some ways that's made the endpoint better, hasn't it? Because actually you focus on load management. So the customer never really, if the customer always used a 150 kVA generator, regardless of what it was attached to, that stage 3 machine would work and chug along quite nicely. Wouldn't really break down, relatively bulletproof. As soon as you stick a stage 5 on the end of the cable, then what's on the end of that cable, what's generating the load, is hugely important, because an underloaded stage 5 breaks down very quickly and causes Andrew and the remarketing team huge problems. So you've had to the whole focus has turned to load management, and in certain sectors that's hurt more than others. In film and TV, it's been a major problem, because gaffers, lighting directors who are doing some of the big sort of movies in the UK, used to always need 100 kVA on top of some tungsten lights to generate a certain load, which sort of worked. As the tungsten lights in the film and TV all went LED with, again, technology, and then you stuck a stage 5 on the end of it, you've got something that doesn't need much load, a highly temperamental machine with a DPF that kicks in every 5 seconds and causes all sorts of problems when it's underloaded, causing absolute chaos. And the reality was, it's shutting down, partway through a Tom Cruise scene when he's getting very agitated about needing certain sets of lights on. I mean, that's maybe a silly example, but it gives you a feel for how technology, when deployed too fast, that's ill thought through, with people who are not fully understanding of what makes it work, can create real-time problems. So that's a problem, but also it provides the rental industry with an opportunity to solve. And I think that's why the rental industry gets dragged into a more solution mindset as new technology and complexities arise. So that for me is an opportunity. Whilst it can be a bit turbulent, it's an opportunity that all of us can sort of grab with two hands to help the customer out.
You see, this is where rental is rental, though, isn't it? Because as I explained earlier, we have, and I'm going to use the word manage, but we have to manage things like obsolescence. But if we don't manage it, then our business ceases to exist, because customers, absolutely expect the next iteration. So when you got people using the old tungsten light bulbs, versus LED, well, people are going to gravitate to LED. So from my perspective, I have to keep that fleet balanced, and work closely with the finance team to make sure that we do not overexpose ourselves on assets. As the technologies advance, I almost have to be 1 or 2 stages ahead of it, and then develop, design, iterate, implement certain changes to the fleet. So we can always offer the best and most up to date technologies, but dealing with the assets in the back end as well.
So Andrew, you originally went from GE to Ashtead Plant Hire, leading you into the Sunbelt family. How has this journey impacted you, and what is your excitement within your role, the vision and direction that you guys are moving towards in Sunbelt's product offerings to deliver to customers across Europe?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I was with GE for 15 years. Obviously, being an American business, I'm kind of used to, I guess, early advancements into the Sunbelt world. When the company started getting bigger and bigger in the US, certainly. So very very similar roles, basically in the world of asset management. Um, I have to be honest. When I first started, moving from 15 years into a major corporate into what was a plant of old 15 years ago was transitioning a big challenge for me, if I'm honest. And it probably took, and I say this story a lot, but between 18 months and 2 years for me to finally get my head out of the sand saying, what the God have I done? However, what I did find after the 2 years was, I joined a business which was very nimble. It was actually more like a family than the big corporate that I came from. They were the heady days when we were in the FTSE 350. So we were a company that was absolutely advancing and becoming one of the market leaders, certainly in the UK, and also driving that into the US as well. It just allowed me to, with customer side of things, just adapt quicker. So I did have, whilst I came, let's say, I joined Ashtead at a lower level, so I used to be a statutory director for the 5GE businesses. But coming into A Plant, I felt I had more autonomy than I did in GE, because we were a lot nimbler. So the investments I made, I didn't have to go through boards and committees. I could literally just, chirp up one day to the CEO and say I want to put the investment in because Balfour Beatty or Bam Nuttall or Skanska are asking for it, and we became a lot more nimble, and I think it allowed us to adapt and change to our customers' offerings a lot quicker.
So, Phil, you stepped into the CEO role after planned succession. Have there been any key moments, experiences, or conversations that have really surprised you about your role, the strategy in general, once you stepped in? And what's been some really exciting moments for you over the past, couple of years in your new role?
Yes, I suppose the role of the CEO is, well, each role within the sort of senior team is incredibly important. Each of them have got different roles. The role of the CEO, which you sort of got to get used to, is one that's much more focused around strategy, culture, and then capital deployment. And then you've got to really restrict yourself from trying to get into all the other things that you'd love to get into, that you're interested in. So that's where the team comes in. So actually the biggest challenge for me is actually trying to restrict myself to think about, right, what is the strategy of the business? How do we create the very best culture? And also, how do I make sure I'm involving myself in the big decisions, but not treading on everyone's like Andrew's toes, trying to help, in inverted commas, with every purchase order that gets placed, which is what you desperately sort of want to be doing all the time. You desperately want to be in the weeds. And the biggest challenge is, for me at least, but it's also the biggest reward when you get it right, which isn't all the time, is trying to create a brilliant culture within the business. If you've got if us three started a rental business and we had 10 employees in our depot, because we're there, we would set the tone for the culture. Because we're there, we'd meet the customers on a regular basis. We'd know exactly what the customer wants. We'd be able to differentiate between that type of customer and that customer because we're seeing them and breathing them. When you've got 180 locations like we have in the UK and Europe, and we're spread across the UK, Ireland, we've got a small business in the Netherlands, a bigger business in Germany, you just cannot be in every location all the time. So you've got to think really hard about how you ensure you've got a super positive, make it happen, vibrant, customer-focused culture. And the biggest thing we did to try and engage the teams better was actually doing a coordinated set of roadshows. So every 6 months we go out into the business in pairs with the top 100 leaders to engage the teams, to learn more about the nuances of what's going on in each individual business unit and each and every depot, and then trying to feed it back so that people's voices can be heard in the same way they would be if you were running one depot. And that's the most rewarding thing when you get it right. but it's also the most frustrating thing when you don't get it right. So those are some of the things that I think about.
So Phil, Andrew, I guess for you both, this leadership and any leadership role comes with an enormous amount of responsibility, having thousands of employees, major customers, long-term strategy decisions. How do you personally carry that level of responsibility? Are there certain habits, maybe some techniques you've been given from a mentor, routines that you use to stay sharp and balanced within your position day to day, and how you really want to be seen and moving people towards your vision as a leader within your respective roles?
I'll let you answer that first, Andrew.
do you know what? I knew you would. Yeah, good question, Michael. Probably with me, the wrong audience. I'm seen to be the bit of the hothead in the group, so I get my balance from the rest of the team. But as I keep saying, given my job, I'm not going to say I'm an island, but I do kind of work more remotely than the rest. So my interactions day to day are with key suppliers. I get involved in the problems. So working with the depots, if there's issues with assets or suppliers, they come to me. So 9 times out of 10, the discussions I'm having are always to try and resolve issues or drive down price, get the best commercial decision, work on parts discount, warranty claims, payment terms. So my role is obviously all challenging. Hence why my kids probably hate me, because all I'm ever doing is picking them up on the bad things and not the good. But as I said, I do take comfort that I work with a great team of people. Each of them has their own unique skills, and I gravitate to the ones who are with a more calming approach. So there's a colleague of mine I kind of work closely with, and whenever I'm sounding off, I'll go to him, or I'll go and jump into Phil's office and he can calm me down. So there's my answer.
You maintain sanity by spending time in a spreadsheet on a Sunday afternoon thinking about asset lives and residual values.
Yes.
I mean, from my perspective, it's about keeping things simple, isn't it? So just coming back to making sure that people understand what their responsibilities are, what they're accountable for, and trying to desperately keep it simple. Because the larger the organisation gets, the more complex it gets, the more great ideas there are from lots of different voices about adding that here and putting that step in there, and before you do that, speak to him, and before you do this, email that person, and before you know it, you've got a spaghetti bowl of processes and systems where nobody really knows who's making a decision. I've got to check with her first, then speak to him before I then send an email to them, write a letter to him, and then I can finally say yes to the customer and write a hire contract. And you think, and all of those individual steps were probably brought in for a good reason, because something didn't work right. Oh, let's introduce this. So maintaining sanity for me is around keeping things as desperately simple as you possibly can. Removing as much as you can, and it's sometimes hard to remove it once it's there, of complexity. And then just making sure that people at the front end of the process, and we don't get this right all the time at all, is the reality. We're constantly battling this, but making sure that people closest to the action are empowered to make the decision for the customer that makes sense. Because people 3,000 miles away like me, are just not close enough to the action to be able to make those sorts of decisions. You're just constantly fighting for that type of environment. And when it works, then mine and Andrew's jobs are easy, because we just watch everybody doing a great job. And when it doesn't work, that's when things get a bit more lively.
So guys, if we look and fast forward in 5 years, what do you think the best rental companies will be doing differently from the rest? Phil, you've mentioned that momentum builds success. So what advice would you give to people like myself, maybe the younger generation moving into rental, the next generation of rental leaders, on what they need to be doing now to really set themselves apart in 5 years?
Yeah, so I suppose maintaining expertise is super important. Maintaining a focus on solutions are really important, and listening to the customer is super important. So when the customer's talking about their problems, you want to be creating a solution which nobody can compete with. That your team collectively can solve better than other people, and you can solve that in a way that is repeatable and scalable. So it's just thinking through how you build that team, or how do you become a part of that team that adds value through expertise and is constantly listening and being curious is what I would say. Clearly, technology advancement is going to be huge over the next 5 to 10 years. With Andrew mentioned it before, with AI, machines are increasingly going to be computerized and have digital sort of AI interfaces, but you're still going to need people with motor skills to actually work with those machines and apply them to the right solution. So it's probably a mixture of those different aspects.
Phil, Andrew, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited. Hopefully we can catch up soon in person, maybe in the UK or in Australia. And I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
No worries.
Cheers.
Great to meet you, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one.